Hi, everyone. This week is going to be pretty intensive when it comes to programming. Um, the first lesson is 5.05, which is nested loops. So, what a nested loop is a loop inside of a loop. So I wrote a program, for this week, but I have most of it commented out. Right now, we're just going to focus on the nested loops. So the first loop I see here is a simple for loop that has row as 1. As long as row is less than 6, we're going to increment row. That's often referred to as the outer loop. As long as this condition is true, which it is the first time through. In fact, I'm going to bring this down to 3 just so we can make it a little easier. So what I did, this is true, you go inside. The first thing we're going to do is print the row, say row equals the row number, and then I encounter what's called the inner loop. Every time we come to the inner loop, I see int star is 1. Every time we start a new row, basically, we're going to reset star to 1. So that's the comment I put in there. As long as star is less than or equal to row. So the first time through, when star is 1, star less than or equal to 1, I go inside the inner loop. And I'm going to print star equals and then a star, the value of star and then a star. So in row 1, I should see run 1 star. And then I'm going to move to the next line. And then I've ended the outer loop. So row will increment by 1. I'll go back up. Is 2 less than 3? It is. I go inside. I'll print row equals 2. And then this is where star gets reset to 1. So if 1 is less than or equal to 2, which it is, I'll print star equal 1, a star, and I increment star to 2. I go back up. Is 2 less than or equal to row? It is. I go inside. I print star equals. This time it'll be 2 and another star. So on row 2, there'll be 2 stars. I increment star by 1. I go up. And is 3 less than or equal to 2? It's not. So I skip around, move to the next line, and then row goes to 3, and this would end. So for this one, I'm only going to get 2 rows of output. And clear this out. So I get row 1 has 1 star, row 2 has 2 stars. I printed the value of star so you could get used to it. So if I increase this to 5, this time I'm going to get 4 rows. Row 1 has 1, row 2 has 2, row 3 has 3, and row 4 has 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's really important that you're keeping track of the value for your variables, for your inner and outer loops. And the other thing to note is on the inner loop, this parameter, the way I've written it, always gets reset to 1 when we start a new row, and you can see that every time. Okay, moving on. In section 5.06, we learn about writing to output files. So this is pretty similar to reading input files. So the first thing I do is I create a file that I've called out1. Say file out1 is a new file. And the name of my file is going to be randomints.txt. Then I create something called a print writer. So instead of printing down here, I'm going to write to a file. So I say print writer. I named it out file is a new print writer. And I've linked it now to this file named randomint. So when I write output, it's going to write to this text file. I'm going to be using an integer variable num because I'm creating random integers. So I'm creating random integers that that are in the neighborhood of I think the lowercase ASCII values. So I'm just generating random ints from 97 to like 113, I think it is. So I have a loop. I'm going to generate 10 random integers using this command. And then instead of printing them, I say out file. So print write to and on it will be 1 on each line, the number I generate. When I'm done writing to my output file, I close it. So I'm just going to quickly delete my last version of this so you can see what it's going to look like after I run this. Okay, so I still have my output from above. Over here, I notice that I now have a file called randomints.txt, and in it should just be random numbers, and there are just 10 random numbers. Now, one of the programs you're going to do in this lesson is pretty intensive, and what you have to do is you have to generate a file with integers in it, and you have to write it to an output file. Then this is the important step. This file is then read and analyzed as input. So we're going to do that now. So I'm going to read the random ints text file, which is just full of a list of 10 integers, and print the corresponding ASCII character for each integer, and I'm going to number each row. So this is an example of an output file being used as an input file in another part of the code. So again, I use the file command and I say, and I'm going to call the file I'm going to read in it as input. So I say file input is a new file. And now I'm linking it to that text file we generated above called random ints. Then, since I'm reading an input file, I create a scanner. So I'm going to say scanner scan is a new scanner, and now I link it to input. Since I asked you to print to number each one, I have a parameter count that I'm setting equal to 0, and I'm creating another integer parameter int token, since each element in the file is an integer, and I'm going to scan each thing or each token in the input file. I called it int token. So while scan has more in it to process, I'm going to read in the integer scan.nextInt and assign it to int token. Then I'm going to create a character C and ask to give me the character based on it shouldn't be num, it should be int token. That was a mistake of mine. Okay, so we read it in as int token, and now we're going to find its character. I want to increment count by 1 since I set it equal to 0. So the first time through, the counter will be 1. And then we are going to print on a single line count. And then I'm going to tab. I'm going to print the number. I'm going to hit a tab. And then I'm going to print the associated character. And I'm going to do that all in a loop. And when I'm all done, I'm going to close the scanner. So I'm going to go ahead and oh, I have a little typo here. Let me get rid of that. I'm going to go ahead and compile, and I'm going to run. So you can see, so this was from before, and now here I have each row numbered. I have the integer and the corresponding character, and you can always go back and check that and make sure that we're getting the right character if you don't believe that's the right one, and it does turn out that they are. So this week is tricky. It's pretty programming intensive, but I hope that this video and this little bit of code will help you get started. Have a good week. Thanks.